as growing numbers of Australians sink further and further into debt, leading to what's now been dubbed mortgage stress. The lending practices of the big banks are also coming under increasing scrutiny, with two influential federal parliamentary committees and the corporate regulator ASIC all intensifying their inquiries. It comes amid complaints of unscrupulous behaviour by lenders in cases where customers claim they've been forced to the wall after being persuaded to sign complicated loan guarantees they could neither afford nor understand. The National Australia Bank has come in for particular criticism, accused of unconscionable conduct towards borrowers who've lost everything. Nick Grimm reports.
We had a very comfortable life. That's all changed. They have taken away...
My mum's home.
Yeah, my mother-in-law's home.
Took away 4 factories in Queensland.
Yes.
1 factory in Melbourne. About 10 factories in New South Wales. Took a house office in Cabramatta.
The Safetley family know what it's like to lose almost everything to the bank. In fact, when the National Australia Bank foreclosed on their loans, husband Haysom Safetley even lost his grip on his sanity.
I had a husband who was a successful businessman who had a complete breakdown, who ended up in a mental health facility, trying to take his own life.
I completely lost the plot. I lost my mind, I lost everything, I lost all feelings that I had left in this world.
Before their financial ruin, the Safetleys thought they were building their wealth on solid foundations. But they now say NAB's banking practices brought it all crashing down around them. The question worrying authorities now is, how many other Australians could be in the same situation?
It erodes confidence, it certainly erodes my confidence in the robustness of bank dispute processes.
Well, if it's a systemic and regular occurrence, then obviously it's a very serious matter.
Today, the Safetleys are in financial limbo. As their dispute with NAB has dragged on, Haysom Safetley has tried to eke out a living selling tyres from his home garage.
So this is the factory floor now?
Yeah, my 3-car garage, as you can see. That's where we put everything in here. Tyres, everything else.
Haysom Safetley says his troubles began when NAB itself overextended finance to his wholesale tyre company under an existing trade refinance and credit facility. In this notice of termination and formal demand, the bank admits it made a mistake. In fact, an $800,000 mistake.
Actually a National
Australia Bank letter saying that we made a mistake.
A genuine
mistake.
Yeah.
Look at this.
But according to the Safetleys, that didn't stop the bank demanding immediate repayment. The money had already been spent on new stock, and the family's cash problems only got worse as the bank began seizing assets, triggering a cascading series of loan defaults.
At any time we could have sold assets and paid off the bank. The problem you have with the banks is when they grab you, that's it, you're finished.
It might have been just another of the scores of business collapses that occur every year, but authorities are especially concerned about what happened next.
I end up with nothing. My son end up with nothing. We all end up with nothing. Our kids, his kids.
Fauzia Safetley and her daughter-in-law Amanda Safetley claimed they were asked by the family's bank manager to come to his office to sign some routine documents.
He put all the papers in front of me, sign here, I sign here, I sign, that's it. Thank you very much. That's it.
Now, I know that in hindsight we should have checked these things, or I should have. My mother-in-law has limited English, limited reading. You walk into the bank, they give you a wad of documents, say 100 pages, and the little tabs that just say sign here, and you do it. There's no likelihood of settlement on Tuesday the 10th of June.
What both women claim they were never told was that they were in fact signing binding personal guarantees over the loans mistakenly made to Haysom Safetley's tyre business. Those guarantees would shortly afterwards see them each lose their homes.
And did anybody say, before you sign this document, please go and get legal advice,
No.
speak to your own lawyer?
No one told me that, honestly.
Now, that raises a very serious level of question over the internal practices at the NAB.
Bruce Ford is an independent advocate who helps people like the Safetleys resolve disputes with the banks.
The NAB and all banks are obliged at law to provide or afford consumers to obtain independent legal advice prior to granting a guarantee. And that wasn't followed through with Mrs. Safetley.
The corporate watchdog, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASIC, shares the concern, as it makes clear to the bank in this letter.
NAB's knowledge of Mrs. Safetley's level of understanding and the lack of any opportunity afforded to Mrs. Safetley to obtain legal advice raises concern about unconscionable conduct by NAB.
Perhaps more seriously for the bank, ASIC is also concerned about NAB providing false evidence about the matter.
Statutory declarations which stated that she had received independent legal advice were false and known to be false by the NAB.
This is the 5th time now that the bank is under scrutiny for precisely those things.
In fact, in 2001, the federal court ruled that NAB had acted unconscionably in the case of a Tasmanian woman left in charge of her husband's business after he'd suffered a serious head injury. In his absence, she signed what the bank told her were routine papers. They were anything but. What she signed was a personal guarantee over her home. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission took action, alleging in court the bank did not explain the consequences of the guarantee to her, nor did it reveal that her husband's business was already in serious financial difficulty.
Not that long after signing this, the bank then said, "You'll have to sell your house to meet the personal guarantee."
As a result of that case, the National Australia Bank consented to orders that it would in future ensure its customers had the opportunity to obtain legal advice before signing guarantees.
There's got to be alarm bells ringing for the regulator to say, why are we doing it? Or why are we here again after the ACCC's prosecution for precisely the same thing?
Looks like you've got a few kilos of documents here.
I have a lot of documents, but unfortunately I haven't had any positive results.
Vula Amasa is also locked in dispute with NAB, again over an agreement that she claims was never properly explained to her. The Sydney pharmacist claims that she lost her family home and other assets after her husband arranged a loan from the bank.
I discovered that the loan had actually been rejected, and the only way that it had been passed was by putting it in joint names and using my properties as security.
She was asked to sign, I believe, under a certain degree of duress or stress, but she had no knowledge of the joint loan in her name until she got to the bank.
Vula Amasa has since separated from her husband, but says she's still angry with the bank for keeping her in the dark.
Basically, I went in to sign a loan document. I wasn't given a copy of that document. I wasn't even afforded or given any statements when the mortgage was put into place, and that ended up being a financial disaster for me, a complete financial disaster.
If that is the case, then clearly that is not appropriate practice.
Senator Grant Chapman is the chairman of the Federal Parliamentary Committee on Financial Services, which has been on the receiving end of complaints about the banks. In a written response to one, Senator Chapman notes that the allegations of malpractice and unconscionable conduct suggest a number of banks continue to engage in practices that appear to be seriously flawed.
We want ASIC to thoroughly investigate each of these cases, come back to us with the details of their findings, and then we'll make some decisions from there.
Meanwhile, opposition committee members aren't as confident with ASIC's ability to bring the banks to task and have accused the regulator of dragging its feet.
Specifically, when has ASIC examined the operations of internal disputes processes in, let's say, the 4 major banks?
I can't answer that specifically.
But I have raised this issue on, as I said earlier, at least 2 or 3 previous occasions, and I don't seem to be getting anywhere with some very clear, definitive, statistical, factual response.
We're still asking how much we owe you. Imagine that. They won't tell you how much you owe them. Imagine that. Can you imagine you asking me how much I,
Write them a blank cheque.
Write them a blank cheque, that's what they want.
Now, we approached the National Australia Bank for its response to the claims being made about its lending practices, but the bank declined to comment, telling us that to do so would breach the privacy of its customers. However, a bank spokeswoman did tell us that the bank makes every effort to work with its customers to resolve any disputes, and the bank will cooperate fully with any inquiries that are launched into that process. For their part, though, the Safetleys remain unconvinced by those reassurances.
They're the ones that tell everybody what to do. They can do anything they want, anytime they want. And it's about time somebody's just put a stop to it.